Alright YouTube, welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. This time I'm doing a little bit more of a complicated how to play video where I'm going to walk through a sample turn of the game where a lot happens, let's say. And we're using the deck from the last deck tech video, so if you want to make sure that you understand what all the cards are and what they're doing, go and check out that video first. But if you just want to kind of get an example of what some of the game can look like, stick around because I'm going to go through each phase of a turn, all the resolutions of all the abilities, and exactly how everything's going to happen so that you can get an idea of what's going on. So the first thing is I've set up a board state to have just kind of a bunch of things going on. I've got 4 cards in my hand. This is the stuff in my tableau. When you run out of space in your tableau, it's common to create a second row where everything still runs from right to left, but it will be from bottom to top because it is always going to resolve newest to oldest. I have my deck here, and then next to it I have my discard pile, and then above that I have my banish pile. In the banish pile is just a couple of things, but specifically including Tybaltimus the Scorned, where when that ability triggers, we'll get to that. But there's a bunch of stuff in the discard pile, which includes enough crewmates for Eternal Greed to activate. So we'll get a chance to have a look at how everything's going to happen. So first thing, we start in our construction step. At the beginning of the construction step, 2 things happen. The first thing is you get 1 construction point, which is like a currency that you can use to use actions in the construction step. Which I'm not going to use just yet because the other thing is the Tybaltimus the Scorned triggered ability. If I have 4 cards named Tybaltimus in the banish pile at the start of my construction step, draw until I have 2 cards in hand. But I already have 4 cards, so that's not going to do anything. But if I had no cards in hand, I would get to draw 2 cards. So we then have our 1 construction point. I'm then going to discard cards from my hand to generate extra construction points just by discarding all of them. You can always just make excess construction points, that's always fine. So we're going to discard all 4 and get up to 5 construction points. I can then spend them on playing event cards from my hand, which I don't have any. Activating abilities such as Remnants of Scarshank, where I could return it from the discard pile to play, but I don't have any. I can remove construction points from face down cards, which I'm going to do in a second. And the other thing is I can remove damage from cards in play, but I don't have any damaged cards in play. So I'm going to spend 2 of my construction points to view all of the construction time on this face down card. So we get to remove that. I'm going to have 2 left, but I'm not going to spend it or anything. So I'm just going to do this first. This has no construction time on it, so it's going to get turned face up. We now get to see Fell's Seermaiden activate. First, we're going to do its effect, which is draw a card. Your opponent banishes the top card of their deck. So they banish a card, and then Fell's Seermaiden is going to send orders to other cards in my tableau based on one of the 2 traits that it has, which is either Clearin, which is blue cards, or crewmates. I have a bunch of crewmates in here. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a gap here. So I'm going to select crewmates. So only these are things that Fell's Seermaiden can send orders to because they are crewmates. Sea monsters will not receive orders from anything. They are untamable, and structures and pirates are the factions of these 2 cards, so they will not receive orders. So then these things can potentially activate. First, starting with Scarshank. Scarshank says once per turn I can put a guy from my discard pile into play, which I am going to do with the Galleon Raider. So it says play a crewmate from your discard pile with development time equal to its discard cost +1. So this is 0 and it's +1. It comes in face down with 1 development time on it. And then this has resolved. We then move on to the next thing, which is going to be Ambitious Deckhand. So Ambitious Deckhand says, do you have 3 crewmates in play? Which I do. Then I may banish 2 cards from my discard pile to claim a treasure, which I'm going to do. I'll just get rid of the top 2, and then I would claim a treasure. Hitting 7 treasures is how you win the game, so that's effectively 1 treasure closer. Then we have Galleon Raider. It says you may discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. I only have 1 card in hand, so I cannot activate that. You can always choose to skip on something or fail to be able to, but you can't do half of something. I can't just discard 2 cards, choose not to draw the cards, or the other way around. I can't just draw the 3 cards and not discard 2 cards. You have to be able to do everything. And then these don't activate. So then this card, Seermaiden, is considered completely resolved. It's resolved, and the orders that it's sent have resolved. So I can now go back to doing construction step actions, such as discarding this 1 card that I have to generate a construction point. I already had 2 from a minute ago, but it's not important. I can then flip this card face up by using the construction points to pay for that 1 construction point, which I'm going to do. So we turn the Galleon Raider face up. Now, this is a red card. What's interesting here is that we've seen these 3 cards activate in this phase, so they cannot activate again in this phase if they are sent orders. But Galleon Raider is a red card, so I could send orders to the red cards that I have, which includes another Galleon Raider, which includes the Tideskipper, none of which can do anything because I have no cards in hand, but also includes Dread Omensinger. So I can look at the top 3 cards of my deck, and then I can choose to keep any number of them in my hand, which I'm not going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and discard them. And then that resolves the Dread Omensinger's ability. Now, I have no more possible actions in my construction step. So we'll reset all these, because as I go to the next phase, they can activate again. I now have my draw step, where I will draw 1 card if I have cards in hand. If I have no cards in hand, I will draw 3 cards, and then I will draw an additional card if my opponent has more treasures than me. But I'm going to assume that I have more treasures than my opponent, so I'm just going to draw 3 cards. Then I go to my main phase, where I'm able to play a card from my hand and then activate the tableau, which I'm going to do with this Orgmundarr the Reshaper, and I have to pay his discard cost, which is 1, so I discard another Orgmundarr the Reshaper. I'm just going to move these guys over just to pinch. You can all squish up a little bit here. Move this over. Here we go. Okay. So, Orgmundarr hits the table and he activates. He says draw a card, and then I can add a development time to one of my opponent's face down cards. Let's assume I do that. I can then send orders to all blue cards or all crewmates. I'm going to send orders to all crewmates. First of which is Galleon Raider, so I can actually discard my 2 cards to draw 3 cards. So that is activated. I then can activate Seermaiden again, because it is in a different phase. In the construction step, it activated, but now I'm in the main phase, so it will get an opportunity to activate again. So it says I get to draw a card, my opponent banishes the top card of their deck. I now have no cards left in my deck. Next is Scarshank. Scarshank specifically says once per turn, so he cannot activate again, even though it is a different phase. And then we have Arvyjj, who doesn't receive orders from anyone. Ambitious Deckhand will activate again. I'll get another treasure. Galleon Raider activates. Now, I am going to discard 2 cards so that I can draw the 3 cards. But because there's no cards in my deck, I have to reset by shuffling my discard pile back into the deck. So that's what I'm going to do. And then the cost of resetting the deck is you banish the top card. If you can't banish the top card, then you lose the game. I then have my deck now, and I get to draw the 3 cards from the Galleon Raider. We then have the Tideskipper. which cannot activate because it is a structure, and we are activating crewmates. Same with the Dread Omensinger, it will not activate. Now, main phase is completed because the card that I have played has finished resolving and the orders that it is sent has finished resolving, which means that we move to the Rampage step. And Arvyjj the Corruptor has not activated yet this turn, which means that Arvyjj will activate and Arvyjj will send orders to everything to the left of it. So first we'll start with Arvyjj, where it says reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and then choose a crewmate with a discard cost not found in your tableau. I do have something that costs 3 and I do have something that costs 2, so there's no targets that I can select, and then I discard the rest, which means I'll be discarding these 3 cards. And then Eternal Greed, if you have 8 or more crewmates, I can claim a treasure, but I've only got 3 in the discard pile. So the secondary effect will not activate, and then now he will send orders to everything, where I get to activate the Ambitious Deckhand, activate the Galleon Raider, the Tideskipper, and the Dread Omensinger. So starting with the Ambitious Deckhand, we've got 2 cards in the discard pile, and we'll claim a treasure. That will be the 3rd treasure of this turn. Usually when you get to this point, this is probably the winning turn, where you collect enough treasures in order to close out the game. So we've gotten just 3 from this Ambitious Deckhand. If we had another treasure claiming card, we could have potentially gotten 6 this turn or more. That is the power of the sea monster, and also being able to activate stuff in your construction step with Landlocked Crowsnest or Scarshank Dreadbeard. But we have the Galleon Raider next, which I'm going to choose to skip. We're just going to not activate that one, which is fine. Then we have the Tideskipper, where I can discard a crewmate from my hand. I have some options, and then activate its effect. So I'm going to discard Orgmundarr the Reshaper, which says draw a card, add 1 development time, which I can do. And then the final card, which is Dread Omensinger, where I look at the top 3, and I'm going to put them all into my hand and then put 3 damage onto Dread Omensinger. And then because the Rampage step has completed, Arvyjj has fully resolved, and the orders that he sends has fully resolved. That means my turn has completed. The game functions very programmatically, where everything that you set up, you can understand what is and isn't going to happen based on what you're sending orders to, what cards you've played, and what you've got. And then the trick to the game is trying to organize stuff so that it is as efficient as possible. If I have Arvyjj at the beginning of my tableau, he's not going to send orders to very many things. But playing him early in the game means that he's going to find and play a lot of pirates for me. So there's a lot of strategic depth in what you're able to do, and try and setting up for one of these really big turns to get a bunch of treasures and try and win the game. And I know this was complicated and a lot to get through. Not every turn is like this. Usually just some of them in the more complicated decks or towards the end of the game. So don't feel that intimidated if you're just starting out and trying to learn the game. I did this just so you could kind of get an idea of what it could potentially look like in some of these best case scenarios. But that is it from this video. If you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will get to them so I can explain stuff that's going on, stuff that wasn't super obvious. So definitely go on to that, but there is other generic how to play videos that gives you kind of an overview, which I do recommend checking them out as well as some gameplay stuff. I have some other deck tech ones. They're all in the playlist, so go and check that out, which will be up in a second on the end screen. So have a look at that. But if you're enjoying the look of the game and you're interested in trying it out, we have a Discord server. The link is in the description. We can come in. The full prints and playset is available there, and also instructions on how to set up cockatrice so that you can play for free online. The entire set is on there, so you can come and play the game for yourself and come and try it out. So definitely check out some of that stuff, and if this is grabbing your interest, stick around on the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all them good YouTube buttons, so you can see more cool stuff coming from Cutlass, and then hopefully soon you'll be joining us in the Age of Steel.